What is up, home service homies? Welcome to the home service happy hours. This is Dan Plata, home service CFO. I'm joined by my guy Cody Rich tonight. Cody, how the heck you doing, man?
Good, man. Good. Yeah, it's like, for me, it's like the off season. I feel like wintertime is like, I don't know. It's when I do like a lot of, I get excited about work. So like for me, I'm transitioning out of like, hunting season, doing my fun stuff until like, all right, it's time to grind.
Yeah. It is funny. Like the parallels of business ownership and outdoorsy stuff. And then there's these ups and downs and highs and lows, and both of them have them.
Yeah.
And you try to like time them so you don't get multiple highs at the same time or multiple lows at the same time. A lot of calendar management for entrepreneurial outdoorsy people.
Yeah, dude. There's this like saying that you see all over the place, and it's kind of cliche, but it's like, work like a sprinter, or like, like the lion, works really hard and then takes a break. And like, I'm kind of that mentality, except for, like grind super hard on the business stuff for most of the year. And then, when I check out, I just kind of like check out. It's hard for me to like
Full
do
check.
all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like it's not I wouldn't call it a relax. It's like a hardcore to check out.
Well, and I've had this conversation with my buddy Ben Smith, who's on your platform as well. We'll get to the Rich Ideas Lab and all that. For all you listeners, we'll get you up. But my buddy Ben Smith is on there, and he and I have that conversation a lot, where it's like, if your hobbies are outdoorsy hobbies, you enjoy quite the level of pain and suffering. And I'm guessing you've seen some Meat Eater or listened to some Meat Eater in your day.
Yeah.
And Steve Rennell always says type 2 fun.
Yeah.
And just like the stuff that sucks in the moment, and then later is the thing you tell stories about. And man, that's just business ownership in a nutshell. It's just like solving shitty problems over and over again. And usually hopefully they're different problems if you're doing something right. But it's all the stuff we reminisce and tell stories about. So I think we're just kind of weird gluttons for punishment in a way.
Yeah, dude, totally. And it's funny because I just got off this like grinder of a hunt, and I was down in Arizona for like 16 days. And if it could go wrong, it went wrong. Like it was like it got to the comical point. Like I think I had 4 flat tires, 2 at the same time. I had like my side by side broke down. I lost my phone for like a solid 24 hours. Like all this stuff.
It sounds like you found it. It sounds like
you found it. I did. It was dude, the whole thing was just like, it was such a test. And like, and not to mention like I'm elk hunting where you're lucky to see 1 elk a day. And I kind of knew that going in. So it was like, I was actually doing pretty good. I was like talking to people who like were there a week and didn't see an elk. So I'm doing pretty good at 1 a day. And so like my wife's like, well, are you at least having fun? And I was like, I don't think this is a fun, like this was not the goal of this one.
Yeah.
Like, it's an endurance test.
I think I'm having later Cody fun. Like Cody in the future is going to reminisce about this and be like, oh yeah, that was a good hunt. Like learned a lot.
But right building a great story. It has nothing to do with fun.
Yeah. I'm working at it. My buddy, Scott Ziegler did a moose hunt this fall up in, what the hell is it? Newfoundland, whatever, up in Canada over north of Maine. And, like flying into Canada, he has a podcast called Time's Up Outdoors. If you ever want to check it out, it's some good bullshit and hunting podcast stuff. And he was up there, and it was like flying into Canada, missing flights, missing luggage, guns get lost. Like nobody knows where anything's at, right? They like get delayed, and then they can't fly into camp, and then issue after issue in camp. And he was just talking to him about it and listening to his version of it on their podcast. He's just like, I was just such a whiny bitch for so long about it, like because it just kept beating him up and beating him up and beating him up. And at some point, he was just like, he had like this epiphany, like self-reflection moment of like, but I'm here, and like any minute I might stumble upon a moose, right? And anybody would give like a hand to be here doing what I'm doing, but I'm like reminiscing about all this bullshit that I had to go through to get here, but now I'm here. So like, why am I still pissed about it, right? Like it ruined like 4 days of a trip, and he had like the epiphany moment of, here we go, but I'm here, so let's make the most of it.
It's funny, and I'll parallels to entrepreneurship, but so many like so many of these type of hunts, you know, I go to Alaska a lot. I go, you know, on these stupid adventures that are just really bad ideas in general. And over the years, like this just becomes the status quo. And I was talking to this other guy that was hunting down in Arizona, and I think it was just not what he expected. You know, it was very mentally difficult. And to me, it's like, no, I expected this. Like this is a Tuesday, right? Like I'm laughing because it's a Tuesday. And I think for me, it's always easier that way. And like this goes into entrepreneurship. Like if a lot of people become entrepreneurs and they're like, what the hell is this? It's not very much fun. Like all I do is put out fires. Like, oh my gosh, like, it's headache after headache.
Owner and take vacation whenever I wanted to make a bunch of money. What the hell?
Right. You know, the guru on Instagram said I was going to be rich in like 90 days. And I think when you go at it from this perspective of like, this is the Tuesday, right? Like this is the norm, then everything is kind of easier. And I don't know if it's like diluting the lows and, you know, like maybe the normal, you know, highs, or I wouldn't even call them highs, like that mid-level becomes the high. You know, it's like, to me, it's like, that's kind of how I look at it. It's like, okay, this is what we do. And there's I think I might have been Gary Vee years and years ago. He was talking about the wartime CEO. And he's like, yeah, everybody can be a great CEO when times are great. But like, you know, the true wartime CEO is someone who can handle their situation, handle these things when everything's going wrong. Right. And I mean, we've all been there. It's like, so I always think back to that, like, okay, be a wartime CEO, man. Be the guy that can handle the shit in the trenches. And I think it's applicable for me. It's like, there's so many parallels between hunting and the adventures that I go on and hunting or in entrepreneurship, mainly because everything goes wrong in both. But like, you know, once you establish that, it's like, okay, this is the normal.
Yeah. You get good at Ben, who I was talking about earlier, references often. He's like, God, you're just really good at being uncomfortable. And it's like annoying. And I was like, yeah, I've been hunting since I was like 5. Like I'm ADD. I don't sit still well. Hence why I'm a business owner. And so, and I'm mostly whitetail hunt. Grew up in Wisconsin, live in Minnesota now. Still need to get out west by you guys and chase some bigger, crazier stuff. But like somehow I can climb a tree and just hang out and just be up there for a long time. Right.
Dude, how do you have ADHD and you can sit in a tree stand? Because like, I can't do it. I don't even think I have it that bad.
Cell phones help. That because I'm like sitting around like reading this or checking that thing out. And I think there's just enough stuff to look at and your brain doesn't rest, right? Like your body's at rest, but your brain doesn't rest. So you just like, you have no distractions. You're just bouncing around between business things and family things and work things and then hunting things. And then you're like, holy shit, there's a doe. Right. And so the time goes fast because your brain, you don't just like sit still. You're bonkers. But that's my only explanation. I actually don't have any idea how I could do it because it doesn't make any sense to me. Ben's worse than I am. He's like the dude sitting up there, like we'll hunt together every once in a while. And I'm half the time just like, dude, stop moving. Like you glassed that way. I usually don't even bring knockers with me because I'm just like, well, if I can see it, I'm gonna shoot it. It's like if it's close enough. If I get knockers on it, like I'm just not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna be like, hey, there's a deer way over there. But he always brings binoculars with, and he's always like moving around and doing this. I'm just like, you're just gonna see less deer because you just keep moving. Like we gotta sit still up here, man. So I think you just gotta, you hunt your own hunt, you figure it out, you get your wins and losses. But I do think there's a weird thing in both entrepreneurialism and hunting where you get to like seek out a strategy and then try to prove it out. And you usually fail. You like set goals. A lot of times you don't achieve them, but you get closer, you learn something. And so it's just this endless path of, you'll never like accomplish the thing necessarily, but it's this perpetual like learning curve that you're on. And so I think that's why guys like us can just stick with it for so long. I think if I was just in a job, I'd get burnt out. And I had a job for 10 years. I was in the corporate world. And you just like, you run out of this learning curve and then you're like, I hope I get a promotion so that I can like, go, right. It's like, I don't get to go do something else unless I'm given an opportunity or, I get a promotion or whatever. But when you're a business owner or an outdoorsman, you're like, oh, I'm just going to go do this thing. And I don't even like, I guess I should probably ask my wife for permission if there's somebody I need to ask permission of. But otherwise, like, I'm just going to make this decision and go for it. And so it's kind of a cool freedom to, get ourselves in some trouble every once in a while, but I think that's what we
I would say like hunting is a great, I wouldn't say vacation, but like it's a great vacation or hobby for entrepreneurs, because most entrepreneurs can't just sit still. Like we can't sit on the beach. We can't just like, oh, I'm going to sit there and do nothing. Cause all we do is think about business. Right. And so like, with hunting, you go on a moose hunt and like all of a sudden you're like, you got things to do, right? There's like things to accomplish. You have a mission. Like you're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. Even like logistics and planning and all that stuff. Like to me, it's like, yeah, it's such a good, I would say escape more than a vacation, but it's like, yeah, like, check out, I got to go do this other mission for a little bit. And it's very like mission driven to me. It's like, I got things to do, like, I was in Arizona for 16 days and well, actually more than that. That's how many days I hunted. But like I just feel like there's so much to do, so much to check, so much to like, and it's like, ironically didn't have time to like think about business and doing all that stuff. I was like pretty busy.
I think that's the beauty of it too, though, is because I'll do a Boundary Waters trip usually every year. And this last year, Cole Sycophus came out there with me, and he and I were talking about this, where it's like, if I just was on a vacation, it would be impossible for me not to crack open my phone or computer. And frankly, like I shouldn't say impossible. I could probably keep it away, but I wouldn't enjoy it. Because I'd be thinking about that. And so it would take the joy out, because I need to be engaged in something. I don't need an itinerary, right? Like I kind of don't want an itinerary. I'm going to come up with a plan. Like I don't need somebody to tell me what the plan is. I'll come up with one. But when you're out hunting or fishing, there's always something to be engaged with, mentally or physically. And so, like you said, it's not necessarily a vacation, but it's an escape, because you don't have the physical or mental capacity to worry about work. You're busy. You got stuff to do. Like you got stuff to do to not get hurt, to be able to like achieve a thing to get to this side of the mountain or this side of the lake or whatever it is. You get done with the trip and you're like, wonder how work is going anyway. Like, wonder what those people were doing the whole time. Like, I haven't had time to think about it for a week or 16 days or whatever you had.
Dude, the thing I talk a lot about with entrepreneurs is like, to me, hunting has kind of always been this litmus test of like, is my business set up and running well? Are the systems in place for me to escape? Because as many entrepreneurs as I do that just fall into this trap of being like the head of everything. And they put themselves in the way. They're their own bottleneck. And so for me, it's like years and years and years ago, it's like 4-hour work week days. I was like, yeah, I'm going to leave September 1 and I'm going to hunt all of September. And for me, that's always been a good litmus test of like how well my businesses are doing. Now there's years that are better than some, some years I do it well, some years I don't, there's always different problems or whatever, but like, to me, it's kind of been, it's the reverse. Like people try to find time off to go hunting. For me, like, it's a priority and I have to build the business so that it can happen. So like I work backwards from like, the rule is I leave September 1 and I come back September 30th. How do I make that happen? And then it's like, okay, a lot of business decisions get made with that number one priority in mind. So for me, it's always like, okay, how do I build this business, or how do I take on projects or not take on projects based on that? Like, oh, I have to leave, and so like, to me, it's like, the priority, and I set everything around that. So for me, it's like, I've always said it's like a good litmus test of like, can I leave?
Heck yeah. I had, do you know the company Tethered, the tree saddle company? So I had Ernie and Greg on the show probably about a year ago. And those are super fun dudes. As you can imagine, like we talked a little bit about business. And I think we went for like 3 hours. It was just a marathon. But one of the things they said, because I asked them, I was like, man, doesn't it suck like owning a hunting business? Like, aren't you tied up during the season when you would want to be out there? And they're like, no, that's why we sell the gear. Like we're really busy all spring, and then like summer's rolling it out. And by the time fall comes, everything that's done is done. Like we're just out hunting and like testing next year's release stuff, right? Like I was like, oh, that's brilliant, man. Because if you work in like retail or farther down the supply chain, closer to the consumer, you're screwed in the fall. Like working in retail would be awful if you like to hunt and fish. The minute you want to be out there, everybody else that wants to be out there is busy coming and buying stuff from you.
Well, dude, this, like your business is what you build. And I think so many people kind of either default or just go with like whatever someone tells them, or like, you know, what other businesses have done. Like, you know, home services is a great example. Like most people are just like, oh, how is it done? Well, like, why can't it be different? You know, and like I like entrepreneurs who like think outside of the box and be like, well, and I got this dirty little habit called elk hunting, and I guess we got to like figure out how to build the business different, you know? And like to me, it's like that's super interesting, and I don't think enough entrepreneurs really like heed that advice.
Well, and I see a lot of folks in my bookkeeping world that, you know, they got into it because they're like, I need something to do. Oh, I'm good at this thing, or I can afford to get into this thing. And so it's a bit of an accidental business a lot of times where they didn't intend on scaling it, and all of a sudden they start scaling it, and they didn't realize they just signed up for a different job than they thought they had. Right. The problems are more often they thought they were going to run a pressure washing company, and now they realize like, oh, I'm a marketing manager of a pressure washing company, and I'm a coach, I'm a leader. It doesn't matter if I'm any good at pressure washing. That's not my job anymore. Now I need to be good at marketing and sales and, you know, leading the team. But that also requires me to be around when they're all out doing the thing. And it is just kind of tricky, and tricky is probably not the right word. It's just funny how like accidental it can be. And you're like, oh, damn. Like now I'm here, and I thought I just had this job, but it just turned into a business, and all of a sudden my priorities changed.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
I do want to get, now that we're like 15, 20 minutes in here, it'd be a good time to intro you. Give us a little bit about your entrepreneurial background. I only really know you from Rich Ideas Lab, and Cole, I think, was the one that recommended me to jump in there and hang out. So give us a little bit of the lead up to that, how you got into that, and what else you got going on.
Yeah, just grew up a dumb farm kid. You know, was supposed to take over the farm, but again, like I liked hunting way more than farming. So I was always like, I don't know if I want to do that. And, you know, it's typical family business stuff. But ended up
in Montana. Did you grow up in Montana?
Actually in Oregon, yeah. Yeah, grew up in Oregon. Yeah, like I would have been 7th generation. So my family kind of been on the same dirt since like late 1800s.
Are you ducks or beavers?
Oh, beavers for sure.
Okay. I don't know my Oregon geography that well. I just know there's a couple teams over there, and it's one of those states where I feel like you're either one or the other, but you're probably not in between.
Yeah, well, put it this way: Beavers is the agricultural school, and Oregon is the liberal arts school. So, like, and they're like 40 for people who don't know. Like, Oregon and Oregon State are 45 minutes apart, and
I didn't realize they were so close.
Yeah, they're very close. And one's like the art school, and one's the ag school. So yeah, the Beavers are the ag school. So anyway, I grew up there. Just went down a different rabbit hole, and actually wanted to be a firefighter because I thought those guys get a lot of time off. That'll be good. Long story. Right. Long story short, kind of got into entrepreneurship. I mean, I think I probably always was one, but like just through mentors and the people I worked for early. And then, like a lot of people read the 4-Hour Workweek back when that came out and was like, this guy's got it figured out. And, became an internet entrepreneur pretty much from then. And so the first company I actually started working on this like company that I was working for a guy, one of my mentors, and we had this like ammunition business. And I was like, I had read 4-Hour Workweek, and I was like, build internet companies. Again, I'm a dumb farm kid who could barely turn on a computer at the time, but like figured it out, built this online company, ended up buying it from him, ran that for a number of years, sold that, got into the podcast thing. And I started my podcast in 2015. And then kind of on the back of that, so that was a little bit after that is when we moved to Montana. It was like, hey, I just want to live, where all my passions are and where the hub of the world is to me. And so ended up launching another company after that. That one just got acquired. And then, in the last year or so, kind of started helping entrepreneurs and stuff, doing that kind of stuff. And I said I wasn't going to do another startup, but, secretly working on one right now. So we'll see.
It makes so much sense to say that. And it's so impossible not to,
yeah,
because like all of a sudden a new idea comes and you're like, well, like, I know starting a new business sucks, but all I have to do, it usually starts with a statement like that. All I got to do is this and this and this, and I've done it before, so it's not like I can't do it again. And then you're off and running, going, oh shit, like I started doing this again, didn't I? I got sucked right back in.
Yeah, what started as a great idea and it'd be so easy, and man, we could do it. Just 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's it'll be a cool project. I'm not going to talk about it quite yet, but soon, very soon. So we're still working, still building. Like maybe it falls through or whatever. But yeah, so I guess like I've always been kind of product based or internet company based. I did a lot in e-com, like kind of that's my background. Ironically, just being a dumb farm kid who got into e-com. I don't know how that happened, but built a few brands on the back of that.
When you say internet business, like give us some details of it. What were you specifically doing?
Yeah. So, my first company was an ammunition company, but we were, customer, direct to consumer. So, we had the store and all that. And actually we were kind of centered around the cowboy action space. Just kind of the connections I had, and, I built that company, and there's, a lot of problems with owning an ammunition company. And it was definitely a struggle. I always call that like my MBA, cause I didn't really go to like business school or anything. And I would literally load ammo like 12 hours a day and listen to audiobooks. And like, I listened to hundreds of audiobooks, and that's like, I always say that's how I got my, my business background. And it was really, really good. So that was my first company. I did pretty well. We had a good niche within like the cowboy action space. Like this is like back when SEO was like a big thing, and we were competing with Cabela's for like SEO on, cowboy action stuff. Yeah. And like we were doing pretty good.
For those that don't know what cowboy action is.
Yeah.
What the hell is cowboy action? Like what like, falls into that? Is that like shooting sports in general, or what do you mean?
It's like a type. Are you familiar with like 3-gun?
No,
like 3-gun's a type of competition. So like shooting competitions essentially. So cowboy action is it's a form of shooting competition where they use like historic weapons. So, your 73, your lever actions, your pistols and stuff. It's a lot like 3-gun in that like, they use the shotgun, the lever action, and the revolver. And so like, it's kind of a competition base. And I say like, we sold to those guys, and we had Evil Roy, who was like this big shooter. He was one of our sponsor shooters, but at the end of the day, we probably made a lot more money off people who just bought ammunition for cool old cowboy guns. So like this is like
that ammunition's probably pretty specific too. You can't just like walk into wherever and be like, I'm just gonna pick up some rounds for this gun I got from my grandpa.
Totally. And that was kind of like, the bread and butter. And like, actually one of our biggest bread and butters, like that, it took me a while to figure out. And I went through a lot of these lessons of like, I thought we should be making like the 940-45 that everyone else did. But like, you go down that rabbit hole and you're competing with everyone. So there's so many lessons learned in that first business, but we ended up in this like very niche, piece, not even of cowboy. Like, so there's a gun called the Trapdoor, which is like a 45-70. It's a Springfield. And like, this is not like a gun that anyone who shoots, but like they're just,
you're just saying numbers. I'm just like, you could have just made that shit up and I'd have no ideas. I love it.
So like, it's just like this super niche gun, but like at the end of the day, we were doing like $1 a round profit on this cartridge. And like, we just reached number 1 on the top of Google for this ammo. And it was just like, that was my bread and butter. And like, I could probably load, 500 an hour. And we were just like, printing money with this.
The riches are in the ditches, baby.
Totally. And so like, that was my first company. And like, I mean, there was good and bad. Like I saw the writing on the wall, like of low margin. One of the biggest things I learned in that company, because you can't have paid ads in ammo, man, it was so difficult. And like it just getting sales every month it was super difficult. But like every month on the first, like you have to do everything over again. Right. And so like, I was like, man, subscriptions are the way to go. Like, I wish we had subscription, And so that company got acquired by a company in Texas. They wanted our, our trapdoor stuff and some of our cowboy stuff. And it was like, cool. I was happy to see it go. At the time, I was like, it was interesting because at the time, like I'd started my hunting podcast. And at the end of the day, like I was very much like, didn't want to be in the shooting space anymore. I wasn't a big shooter. Like, I wasn't super into it. It was just like the opportunity in front of me. And so I was like, man, I want to be in like the hunting space. And I started a podcast and I was like, I don't know what's next, but I'll just like, the podcast seems like a great way to like figure out what the next company is.
What's the name of your podcast?
That's called The Rich Outdoors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. And it's like, that was in 2015. So it's been almost 8 years now. And I saw instantly that it was like, okay, if you want to make more money selling ammo, you have to work more hours. You have to load more ammo, like I'll, stay up later or whatever. But whether I did a podcast for 1,000 people or 10,000 people, it was the same amount of work. So you learn a lot about like scale. You're like, this whole media company thing's kind of interesting. Right. And that was going really well. So, kept doing that, ended up launching a subscription company on the back of that. And so that was called Backcountry Fuel Box. And that Fuel Box was like this idea. It was like, this was when subscription boxes were kind of popular. And it was like, okay, subscription box for like backcountry meals, snacks, bars, like, all the snacks that we eat as hunters. And so I launched that in 2018. And, it did really well. And kind of grew that thing. It was its own headache during COVID and whatnot, but did pretty good.
Oh man, I got to imagine the supply chain of that were a nightmare.
Yeah. It was not my favorite, but and then we did pretty good transitioning that. And then that just got acquired this last year. And so, now I'm just doing the podcast and kind of helping entrepreneurs.
There you go. What was like similarities between ammo versus snacks, and what were some like staggering differences that you ran into?
That's interesting. I've built, I would say 3 different companies in 3 different niches, which is like, the ammo company was very much the shooting industry. And then I built the podcast in the hunting space. And then I built the snack company, and that was kind of in the hunting space, but realistically it was kind of in the REI space, in the hiker space. And so like learning just the differences in the niches and like targeting different people was very eye-opening. I thought it'd be a lot easier than it was. And I think there's a lot of lessons learned there. It's like, man, different groups are very, very different, and in everything they do. And they're kind of a little bit secular. At the end of the day, like, it's supply and demand. Like that's kind of, that a lot of them are all the same thing. And so there are a lot of, like it's kind of the same thing. There's, it's like how you get your customer. And I think that kind of changes between who you're talking to. Right. But I mean, you're familiar with this, like you have to just figure out where your customer is and get in front of them. And then at the end of the day, like it doesn't really matter who that is, where they are, or what they do. And there are differences, but at the same time, like you just got to get in front of your customer and kind of solve their problems.
Yeah. So like the thing to do is the same. The how to do it might change a little bit, but once figured out, just get there. Let me give a couple shout outs here quick. We got Michael Shane Lowe checking in. I think this is a good point. He threw this in here earlier, and I just thought great footwear is the key to everything in life. Growing up, my dad always said, "Don't wear anything you can't run in." I was like, that's probably a good idea. Like, I don't think I caused as much trouble as my old man, but still a good lesson. Doug Brown checking in. Doug's got the 3-peat. This is my 3rd time going live today. I had like a conference that I'm speaking at that did a live thing, and then I have a radio show on a thing called Turfs Up Radio that I do a weekly show on. This one's the late night happy hour. So just sitting here eating this microphone all day, doing it. And I'm not drinking real beer right now. I'm drinking O'Doul's. I do my month-long stretch between the Sunday after Thanksgiving, which is like when our rifle season in Wisconsin ends, to right before Christmas, because like I just like hunting's mostly wrapped up for me and ice fishing hasn't started, and I'm like I can really take like a month without a need for a beer, because during hunting season, like I want to have a beer. during ice fishing, I want to have 1,000 beers. So now's a good time to not have a beer, but I got those rules, so I got that going for me. So with these different businesses now, and I mean, it sounds like now maybe you don't have free time, because if you're working on a new thing, that's probably where most of the time gets sucked up. But how do you talked about scheduling your time and being able to plan for the lifestyle that you want to live. As you're getting into a new business, how do you make that happen? Because like I said earlier, I think for a lot of folks, it's accidental, and you get there and you're like, oh shit, like this isn't exactly what I thought it would be. You have the benefit of some hindsight and some experience that you've done it a few times. But if somebody's just out there and just getting started, whether they're outdoorsy or whether they just love to collect buttons, or whether they're really into figure skating or something else, maybe some skiing or snowboarding or whatever it is, whatever their hobbies are, anything that any suggestions or ideas for protecting that sacred space for folks?
Man, I think it's important. No, I don't care what you do. I don't even care if you don't even take a hobby. If your hobby's working and you're like, I want to work 24/7, I still think it's important to be able to do these things, because what it is like, it's taking you away from, or stops you from being the bottleneck, which is like almost every entrepreneur's like biggest hurdle. Like so many entrepreneurs, there's this classic saying of like, don't work on the business, or don't work in the business, work on the business. And I think once you take yourself out of that, it's in the early days, it's very difficult. Like I've been there multiple times. You have to work in the business. Like you're the only dude. Like I can't afford to hire people. Like today, It's a little bit easier in my current like the one we're building, because like I could pretty much allocate most of everything, right? I can be the guy who's just kind of allocating resources. When in the early days, you can't do that. Like you can't even afford to pay someone to do your Instagram, right? Like you're just like you're in the trenches.
Yep.
And so I think the real question becomes like, yeah, everyone's like, yeah, that's great. I should work on my company, not in my company, but like who the hell is working in it? Because I don't have time, like someone's got to do it. And I think it's important, like he's taking any complex problem and breaking it down into like the small pieces. And so for me, because it's like, all right, let's get super granular. If I was saying like, I got to leave this September 1 and I'm going to be gone, even just say 2 weeks, like I think, maybe a month is probably a lot for people who aren't there yet. And I don't even care if you don't go, I think it's really, really, well, I take it back. You should go. You should take 2 weeks, go on vacation. I don't care if like your thing is sitting on the beach, like figure out a way that you're like, okay, this date we're leaving. Okay. Let's just start with the simple things. Like if I was going to be gone, and I think 2 weeks, kind of the minimum, you can just kind of neglect for 2 weeks and essentially everything will just be there when you get back. But once you start getting past that, that's where it's like, oh, I have to like figure out a way. And so for me, the 4 weeks is a little bit better, 2 each their own, but like, let's just say like in a 2 week time period, if I'm going to be gone, what are going to be the problems? And then you sit there and you kind of break them down and you like write out a list. And it's like, man, this would have to happen. This would have to like this, I have to do this every week, okay. So maybe it's like payroll. Like, okay, so how do I take that? How do I take that off my plate and not become the bottleneck? Right. And I get that there's some things that guys are like, well, I just can't afford that. So how do we increase that? Because we don't really have a business if you have to do everything in it. So a lot of this is like, okay, if I do need to we have to bring in an extra $10,000 a month in order to afford that. Like, okay, then how do we do that? It's like, I think it's easy to get stuck in these traps of, you're working, whatever your income is, and you kind of keep filling those roles, but you have to look at it as like, okay, this thing has to grow past me. We have to bring in enough income that I can outsource these things. Like me working for $10 an hour isn't a scalable thing. And so for me, it's like, it's all about scalability and then just choosing each problem and building one system at a time. And so for me, it's like, okay, here's like the major hurdle why I couldn't be gone for 2 to 4 weeks. How do we solve that? How do we create a system? How do we take me out of the funnel, out of the equation, and make that happen? And it's pretty, like, I know it sounds simple and everyone's like, oh, it's not that easy, but like, it really is that easy. Like you just have to go one by one, build a system for that. Like, how do we solve this? How do we take you out of that? And if, a lot of guys get into them being the lead sales guy, them being the lead point of contact, them being whatever. And I think so much of that usually falls on an ego problem. It's like, man, I gotta be the head person. Like, okay, what if you weren't for 2 weeks? You can be that all the time, but how would your company look? Say if you and say I had a company and you were like my number one guy, like, why can't you be the lead point sometimes? And then that way, that 2 week time period, it kind of just feels normal. And I think a lot of guys have a problem with that, like taking themselves out. So I always say, like, man, ask yourself, like, if you had to leave, what would happen? If you had cancer, you couldn't work. Like, how would you make that work? How would you build a system? How would you build the processes to make that available? And like, it starts with just one at a time.
Yep. Cole just chimed in. He said, a 0 cell service vacation is the next level.
Yes.
Boundary waters next year, Cole. No cell for a week.
I want to tell, just to kind of hit on Cole's point here, I want to tell a success story. Like, this is way back in the ammo company days. I was living in Oregon. Yeah. So I was living in Oregon. I was hunting in Montana, and I came out, no cell service. And I had an inReach, and my lead person, Melissa, and I was like, hey, if any problems, I got the inReach, blah, blah, blah. But like, I came back into service, and I was like, man, that's pretty good. And like, I get the message, on my phone, like our like authorized.net dropped us. Like, we had like basically lost all way to like take money. Like, they had to find a new one. Like, they had to go through this whole thing. And I was like so pumped. Like, it all got executed while I was gone. I was like, yes, like that was the goal.
Yep. And I think situations like that give you the confidence to be able to leave. That, oh shit, they don't need me, and that's good, right? Like, now playing devil's advocate a little bit, I do think that's really challenging for some people. And I've had conversations with my buddy Ben about this as well, because he's got a few $1 million business, and he has gotten himself to the point where it doesn't really need him anymore. And it's a psychological challenge, because us dudes need to be needed. Like, we have a little bit of a hero complex, a little bit of an ego thing. And so it's a challenge when the business doesn't need us anymore. And then we're just like, I don't know what to do besides come in here and break some shit so that I can fix it, so that you guys would realize you still need me. It's like it's just a weird dynamic.
So I would argue that, though, because like, any business that isn't growing is dying. And I think, it's your job as the owner to be the lead growth machine and like be pushing the pedal forward. The nice thing about that job is like, you can kind of do it 9 months out of the year. You know what I mean? Like, we can kind of focus on that outside of whatever season. It could be, ice fishing season or snowmobile season. I got a lot of buddies that snowmobile, and like that's their off time. Right. And so, like, position yourself to be that growth agent or that growth guy. That's like, okay, yeah, I'm willing to work super hard to grow this business those months. And then I get, these months off. Or like, it's not even have to take it off. It's just like a coast.
Yeah. It's weird in that as you go through these like stages of your business, your job changes so much, right? And so just like our employees, right? I think we've all probably had it where we promoted somebody out, Peter Principle style, like, oh shit, I just promoted them outside of their skill set. And now that they're here, I don't think they have what it takes. And I don't think I can even teach them how to do this. Like, now I got to try to like send them back, and that ain't going to work so well. And you get in a weird pickle. And I think we're just as likely to do that to ourselves. Granted, we can invest in our own development and try to build the skills necessary for like the next job within our business cycle. But I think we always put ourselves last so often that we are thinking about our employees and we're thinking about our customers. And then we finally get the systems and the processes in place and hire the next person so we can level up. And then we get there and we're like, oh shit, I don't know how to do this job. I don't know how to I know how to be the top salesperson, but now I need to be the CEO. And I actually was really good at being the top salesperson. I don't know if I'm like fit to be the CEO. I was just a good manager. Damn it.
Yeah.
Like, now here I am. So it is funny. We worry about that with our employees all the time. And I think we're the most suspect to promote ourselves into a role that we're not ready for pretty often.
So like within a company, what do you think your like favorite job would be?
Oh man, just so dependent on the company. I like in my bookkeeping business, CFO and sales is my jam. My favorite thing to do, and I talk to all my clients about this, and I have some coaching clients. I tell them the same thing, which is you need to focus on three things for like always, forever within yourself and in the people that you lead, which is you got to find the thing that you love to do the most. For me, it's talking to business owners. I can talk to business owners all freaking day. So how do I get in a role where I'm doing that? Something that you're really great at, right? You got to love it. But if you love it and you suck at it, like,
Right.
sorry, dude. Or if you're really good at it, but you don't like it, it's kind of screwed too. And so again, for me, it's talking to business owners. I'm good at it and I enjoy it. And then the third is that it pays really well. Like they need to find value in it that they're willing to pay you for it so that it's worth your time to do it. And so if you can marry that you love it, you're really good at it, and it pays well, and people are willing to pay you for that skill set, that's where you should be, right? But if you love it and you're really good at it, but it's worth dick squat to anybody else, still kind of like, well, now it's like the ultimate hobby, but like nobody's going to pay me to go out hunting, right? I love it. I'm pretty damn good at hunting. Ain't nobody going to pay me to do it.
Right.
At least not today. Maybe someday. But so I think if you can find those three things, and in my bookkeeping business, that's like playing CFO for my clients. Today I had 2 budget meetings where we're like nerding out on their business, getting into spreadsheets and QuickBooks. And so I'm playing like coach CFO. I'd do that all day. You don't even need to pay me. Which is like, I take that back. You need to pay me because if you don't, my wife will be pissed that I'm spending all this time doing this and not making any money. So you do need to pay me, not for my sake, just for my wife's sake. Is all.
Yeah, I think about that too. Like for me, you know, like I enjoy the marketing side of it, and I think about that as I build the next thing. There's a guy, Dharmesh. He's one of the founders of HubSpot, and he talks about this. Like he's one of the founders, but like you know, he's kind of built this role within HubSpot. It's this giant, you know, publicly traded company now. But like he takes 0 meetings. Like that's just not a thing he does. Even though he's like one of the owners, and like he only does the aspects that he likes. And he, you know, he kind of only works on a project he wants, you know, and I was like, that's the way to do it. I think for me, like, as we think about moving forward, I'm sure I'll play CEO for a little bit, but like, I want to hire a CEO and like, I just want to go back to like doing the cool marketing stuff. Right. Like that's what I want to do, you know? And for me, so it's like, don't forget that you can build the company however you want.
I've noticed that too, when you were talking about like working on the business versus in the business. A lesson that I learned, and I almost lost a really good employee of ours because I thought the person running the business had to be in the office. And so we have a maid service business. We had a maid service business. It was out in Cleveland, Ohio. And it wasn't huge. It was figuring things out. And we had a cleaner that had a lot of promise. And so we made her kind of general manager of that branch. And we were like, well, the general manager, you know, should be in the office, kind of oversee everything, help with the phones, keep everything organized. And like a few months in, she's like, Dan, I hate this. I like dread when the phone rings, and I don't like sitting here. Like I want to be out in the field. That's where I'm happy. And if that, you know, if that's like a demotion or whatever. And I was like, do you need to be in the office to run the business? Like, does it give you a better lens of everything? And she's like, well, I don't think so. Like, I just end up kind of answering the phones and emails, and I really kind of hate it. And I was like, well, you think you can lead everybody and hire somebody to do the office stuff? She's like, actually, I know the perfect person. And we did that, and it was just smooth as butter. And I was just like, oh, like I just had this preconceived notion that the person running the business had to like sit in a certain chair in a certain office. And that wasn't what she loved to do, what she was really good at, or what she could get paid the most to do. It turned out she could do that from the field, but she was still the best leader that we had, that people wanted to follow, and she could hold people accountable and have tough conversations. And so same thing. It's like, you don't need to be in this role to be the leader of the company. You still got to find the best place that you can lead from. And I talk to our bookkeeping clients about that pretty often, because so many of them are in this race to get out of the field. I'm like, yeah, probably someday you need to, but don't race to get off the truck or race to get out of the operations or out of the field because you think that's what you saw somebody do on social media. Like, you can grow, you can't stay there forever. And some days you're for sure going to have to get off the truck because it is harder to work on the business when you're out, with your head in a ditch.
Yeah.
But that's an okay, if you're really good at it and you love to do it and it's the highest paying job in your company for the stage that you're at, because it's probably pretty easy for you to go hire an office person and it might be really hard to replace yourself in the field. Like, stay in the field for a little bit longer. That's where you're going to win and grow the fastest. The recipe is going to be a little bit different for everybody, and you don't need to do what some jackass said that is floating around spouting opinions on Facebook.
Yeah, and like on that same note, as you were talking about your employee and what she wants to do, you're asking like, how do you set this up? And for me, like one of the successful pieces of it is just empowering the employees to make decisions. And like I feel like so many people feel like they need to tell every employee what to do or whatever. And I tend to, probably to a fault, like push responsibility or let that responsibility fall on employees and let them make decisions. Like going back to the story where I was like, yeah, I was out hunting in the wilderness and like, everything fell apart. Well, that just doesn't happen overnight. Like that happens by, slowly over time, Melissa having to take on more roles, having more responsibility. And it's like, it starts as like, maybe she asked me what to do. And I'm like, well, I don't know, what would you do? What would you do in this situation? And like, there's, I always say like the $1,000 rule, like, and I'll pull this on employees all the time. It's like, well, not my pay grade, which means like, they kind of know, like, if it's under $500, I'm not making a decision that I trust you. That's why I pay you to make these decisions. A lot of times that ends up being like, especially these days, like $2,000 decisions. Like you have to cultivate that. It's so easy for humans. And this isn't anything against employees or anything. It's so easy to want to default to asking you, the boss, what to do or what you want done, that it's comical how you don't think for yourself. Like it becomes almost a habit of like, hey, what do you want me to do? And I see this, like I have my brother-in-law and one of my best friends own excavation companies. And like, in that space, it's always asking them what to do. And it's like, it creates such a like, don't think for yourself mentality and culture within that company that it's like, man, no wonder you're tied to the damn company. You answer every fucking question. And it's like, stop answering the questions. Let them figure it out. Like figure it out.
You said, you're just reinforcing the bottleneck. You're squeezing the bottleneck and putting yourself right in the middle of it. You're the plug.
Yeah. And I really, from the beginning, sometimes, like I said, sometimes to a fault, like there's definitely downsides to it, but I try to get, employees, and that's to me, like how I'll know if you're a good employee. Like, people say like it could take years to figure out if someone's really great or not. Give them a whole bunch of, I wouldn't say liability, but give them a whole bunch of like decision-making, and like, you'll start to weed that out real quick. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, oh, why did you do that? And then just ask the questions. It's like, well, what was your thought there? And I find you'll figure out pretty quickly, if you have the A player or not by just forcing the hand.
Yep. Yeah. When they have to start explaining themselves, you can tell if they're like logic their way through something, or if you're like, maybe you're just not good at making decitions altogether.
So there's the broom over there.
Yeah. Let's find a job that's a really good fit for you. This is something one of my business partners had like instilled in our home service company before I got there, but I've used it ever since. And I don't think he came up with it. I don't know if he got it in a book or Strategic Coach or where he got it from, but we had a decision-making framework. And the rule was any employee is able to make any decision. I eventually had to put a dollar amount on it because one decision cost us thousands of dollars. And I was like, I appreciate your like willingness to make that decision, but that cost us like $4,000. So let's say if it's over $500, like just run it by me. Just like if it's over $500, like just run it by me. Be prepared to like tell me what your logic is, and we'll probably go with your decision. But the decision making framework was if it's the right thing to do for the coworkers, right? If it's good for your coworkers, if it's good for the customers, like whoever the customer is going to be happy with that decision that you made, and it's cash flow positive for the business, go ahead and make the decision. The decision, in the example I gave is he like spent a whole bunch of money getting an old shitty van repaired right before the winter when we're shut down for like 4 months. It was like, hey, we weren't going to need it for 4 months. He spent $4,000 of like our winter cash flow, like in a seasonal business where we really need that money, on a van that we probably would have just dumped. It was worth like $2,000. We put like $4,000 into it. And I was like, yep, it's the right thing to do for our employees. Good to keep them safe. Good working vehicles. Right thing to do for the customer. They appreciate a vehicle like showing up that's not leaking oil on their driveway. Cash flow positive. No, man. Like, not at all.
Yeah.
But at least it gives you like the dialogue and the framework to talk about it. And in a similar vein, and this is one of those things where I always reference this, and I do such a shitty job of doing it in my businesses, but I'm always like, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about this. And then I got to make sure I like get back to doing this. But anytime somebody would bring me a problem, my intent would be that I would require 2 solutions. Like if it's a problem that you feel you need to bring to me, you also you can't bring me that without also bringing 2 potential solutions. So I know that you didn't just come to me with this problem without having thought about it. You at least have to have 2 solutions, and maybe they work, maybe they don't. But I don't want you just spitballing problems at me without thinking about it at all before it gets to me.
So I got a question for you. Now, the devil's advocate to that entire, like, hey, just to empower your employees is nobody gives a shit about your business as much as you do. So like, how do you balance that with understanding like your employees don't care about your business and it's not their job to?
Yes, but I think they do value their job, right? Like if they didn't, especially in today's world, if they didn't, they would just leave because they can go get any job anywhere like tomorrow. So I think if you have a good culture, they appreciate the job, right? And they appreciate where they work. And people like to make decisions, right? Like I think there's a desire for autonomy and for like pride and feeling like they attributed something. So I think they do like to not always have to be told what to do and to have that autonomy. And sure as hell, like I want people like that because I don't want to have to hire people that always need to be told what to do. Then I'm, again, to your point earlier, then I'm just reinforcing the bottleneck. So right. I think there's a chance that you run into a person on your team where they will not give a shit about your business. And then you're like, well, if you don't give a shit, then I guess you probably shouldn't work here because you don't give a shit. And so, base, and that's easy to say on a podcast, but I think if it was spelled out that way, the decision would be a lot easier to make.
Yeah, I would just say like, usually when you have problems with the like employees don't care about your business as much as you do, it's in a much broader context. Like, it's maybe it's the little things or it's a bunch of things. It's like in individual decision making, like you said, if they aren't making the decision that makes sense for the company, then clearly they don't have they don't have the capability to like be a good fit for the team, right? Like if I have to put the motto on the wall for you to understand what we're about here, like it's way over your head. Like we're past that already. So like in some degree, it's like, I get it. Like, having a mantra around like is good, but at the same time, it's like if I have to preach to you like what good morals are or like what doing the right thing means, then maybe we're
I didn't know you made it. I didn't know you made it all this way in your life, and you're like, oh, like treat people with respect. Wow, what? Like what an idea! Right. Like thanks for
what a concept. Yeah. So like I don't know. Like it in some degree, like it doesn't really matter. But I think you can let people have too much freedom, and I think there's a fine line between like giving your employees autonomy, giving them the decision capabilities, and just like being the slouch owner that just screws off all the time. Because once you become the slouch owner, and this is like, I think this is a point of contention for a lot of people. Like, for example, I'll take one of my close buddies. He has a business and he feels like he's got to be the hardest working person at that company. He can never take time off. He's like, I can't, the guys, blah, 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 blah. Like he feels guilty for taking time off. Now, I think it's a difficult thing to do. I think you have to kind of create that culture within your business that like, hey, you know what? I go to Alaska, I go hunting, I do these things. I think you can manage both of those expectations within your employees. But I think the guy who just becomes, complacent or like lets his business do whatever, and he's just always out screwing off, then he's the one that's complaining that his business or his employees don't care about his business as much as he does. So it's like, for me, I'm going to be the hardest worker in the room when I'm there. I'm going to be a leader in that capacity, but I'm also not going to be like, I never take time off. Whatever. Like, this is my business. This is why I built it. And most of my employees, like, I push them to be kind of the same way. Like, I push them to be entrepreneur. I push them to whatever. So like, I think there's two extremes, and I think there's a bunch of ways to work it in the middle. Like there's definitely, I've seen business owners that get super lazy and they just let employees do everything. And then they bitch about employees not caring about their company. So like, dude, you didn't care about your company. So like, why should they?
Yeah, you taught them exactly that behavior.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to do with expectation setting in there too, which is if the expectation, if all you do is work and that's all your employees see of you, you also kind of trap yourself because you have built this expectation for them of you that you're always going to be working no matter what. And that's what you do. And therefore, if you stop doing that, they're going to be like, why is he not working hard anymore? Right. Yeah. Whereas the expectation you set at the beginning is like, hey, we're work hard, play hard. We're going to work our asses off. And then we're going to be gone for a couple weeks, screwing around in the mountains somewhere. And then when we get back, we'll be right back at it. I actually think my marriage is very similar, right? Like I talk about this a lot with my wife, and it's funny to me. I don't know if it's as funny to her, but when we first started dating, we met on Match.com, and I was studying for like the CFA exam when we met. So it was like work, library, studying, eat dinner, go to bed, and I had just zero social life besides hunting and fishing. And I was like, man, I'm just never gonna meet like a good-looking gal unless like one happens to stumble past my tree stand. Odds are pretty low. Better do this Match.com thing. And like my whole profile was just deer and fish pictures. I was just like, well, I better like filter out anybody that's not cool with me hunting and fishing all the time, because that's a deal breaker for me. Like, I'm gonna keep doing that. And the first time, like in the first real test of our relationship, where things came to tears, was we were at a wedding, and I was like, hey, like, I'm leaving. Tomorrow's opening of bow hunting. So like, I'm out. You want to come with me, or like, you want to stay here and like get a ride home with my folks, or whatever you do, like whatever you want to do. And there were drinks involved, which makes it a lot easier to get fed up. But she was just like, I can't believe you're leaving me here. And I was like, whoa, this has been very clear from day one that like the ultimate, frankly, I don't even go to weddings unless I'm in them. This was just a wedding where I happened to be back in my hometown because it was bow hunting opener, and therefore I went to the wedding. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be here. Like, I'm not standing up in it. I don't need to be here. I'll send him a check and I'll go out hunting. So like, I did a really good job of setting that expectation. My wife still really gets annoyed in the fall, but she knows that she's going to get annoyed. So that's fine. Where I really duped her is when we started dating. I had the cushy corporate job. I was doing like on a fast track, good money, good benefits, whatever. And then all of a sudden in like 2016, I was like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to make half as much money, work twice as hard, and have the stress of everybody else's problems. And she was just like, okay. And that's where I really pulled one over on her. Cause ever since then, now I'm in the small business game, and it's like, I just can't see going back and getting a job. But yeah, like, she's got to deal with this. Like, okay, it's a Wednesday night. Dan's recording a podcast, and then he's going to be up early tomorrow morning, probably doing calls and meetings. And then he's going to be, bouncing around traveling to this convention or that convention. So I tell her often, like, you can't get mad at me for hunting all the time. You can get mad at me for being a small business owner. That one I pulled a fast one on you. So.
Yeah, when my wife and I, when we met, I remember that year, I usually hunt a lot. And it's funny because at the time I remember like we were on a date and she's like, oh, whatever, we're talking about hunting. And I was like, yeah, but I really only hunt elk, which is like comical. She always laughs now. She's like, yeah, then it's elk, then it's duck, then it's, deer, that like whatever. Like,
mostly
just going
elk until there's something else to hunt, until I've shot an elk, and then I go try to get the next tag for the next thing.
Right. And it was funny because the first year I was like, man, I feel like I got to really stack the hunts this year. Like, I got to set the bar to like, I'm gone. Oh, I just might like, I'm going to go on buddies hunts. I'm going to go like, just, hey, who's going hunting? Cause I'll go with you. Like, I really got to like
bring a pack and I'll be your mule. Let's go.
Yeah. I got to set the expectation so that it's like, it's clear.
Yeah, set a low bar that I can step over. I don't want to set any unrealistic expectations.
Totally. Yeah.
You got any speaking of hunting, let's talk about that for a little bit. I know you just had a grind of an elk hunt. You got any other hunts left for this year, or y'all wrapped up?
Oh, well, I'm done for the year. Yeah,
I
we'll see.
suppose there's only 10 days left in the year, but I guess the season, if you will.
Well, I mean, kind of go like, well, it's funny because my wife and I actually joked about this. Like, this year was kind of like my dream year. When we first met, this would have been my dream year, which is like 3 premium elk tags, like solid elk hunts, chasing big bulls, all season. So I did a little bit of hunting with my kid and stuff, but other than that, it was like elk hunting all year. And I killed 2 bulls this year, and I had, a 3rd elk tag that I was kind of swinging for the fences for, but essentially I probably, I forget what it was, 40 or 50 days of elk hunting, which, that's awesome. It's great. I just didn't do a lot of other stuff. So it was just elk hunting. But usually I try to I try to line it out towards like, I have one hunt with my group of buddies. It's like, we've been friends since, kindergarten. Try to do one hunt with them every year. Try to do like one big adventure hunt every year, or it's like Alaska, those type of things. Try to do like a solo adventure where, I'm spending multiple days by myself, usually on elk on those. And then maybe a hunt with my kid or something. So I kind of like try to diversify, get a little dabble in everything. So yeah, we'll see. But I just booked a moose hunt for next year. So getting excited about that one. Yeah.
Canada, Alaska?
No, Alaska, nice. DIY. So yeah, go play with some grizzly bears.
I was gonna say, what are the rules in Alaska? I thought there's like certain things where it's like you have to have an outfitter or a guide. Moose isn't one of them.
Moose is not one of them. So you can like sheep, goat. There's another one. Oh, grizzly or brown bears, grizzly bears. You have to have a guide to go do it, but everything else you can do DIY. So you're 21. We went on a caribou hunt, and then last year we went and did like Sitka blacktail, which is on Kodiak. Super cool hunt. And they're just DIY hunts. We get flown out, dropped off, and then you kind of on your own. So this year we're actually doing an airboat. And so I'm taking an airboat, getting dropped off for 7 or 8 days, something like that. It's a pretty short trip. But basically hunting moose in that river bottom corridor.
What's the rule for how big the battle's
50? Yeah. 50? So they have a rule. So if you want to hunt,
hold still, old boy. I'm gonna come up and give you the quick. Here we go.
Yeah, I kind of my philosophy is like most people go in and say like, if it's even close, I'm not going to shoot it. But there's 2 rules. Like it has to be 50 inches wide for you to shoot it. And that's the one people are like, yeah. But if it has what they call 3 brow tines, so like there's these front antlers, it's kind of like, eye guards on a deer. So if it has like 3 of those, which sounds weird to deer guys, but like that's pretty common for a moose to have.
Yeah.
So if it has
got this thing going on.
Yeah. Right, it's got, the front little deals. The way some guys will do it with like a scope. So you kind of practice measuring. So you can use like your MOA or mill to measure, whatever. So he's like, okay, that's 400 yards away. So this would be, and that's a good way to like reference. If it's close, most guys will be like, yeah, like that's 52. Like I don't think we're gonna shoot that one. So it's got to be.
Yeah, I need a buffer of at least 3 inches.
Yeah. So that's kind of fun. I like doing those ones that are new. I went moose hunting in 2012, so it's been a while. Shit, over 10 years. It's crazy. But doing those adventure hunts, that's kind of like, I don't know. It's the ones I like the most every year.
I've never done one. I've been putting in for elk tags in Arizona, just north of Flagstaff, because I got a buddy that's got a cabin there, and so we're just gonna post up at his cabin and then huff it out from there. I think my buddy Ben and maybe Cole, if I can talk him into it. We know jack shit about elk hunting, so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, I watch videos of it on YouTube. I'm just gonna show up in the woods and be like, "Brew!" Like, where they at? Come on, I'm supposed to be running in here now.
I feel like Cole could do it. Cole's been on a number of Western hunts.
Yeah. I think if Cole was with, we'd stand a chance. If it's just Ben and I, we're like, it'd probably be just like a National Lampoon's type of video with us 2 out there. So our strategy was, and this was actually a strategy he got from talking to like one of the Western hunt facilitators. Like there's a couple businesses where you just like hire somebody to help idiots like us figure out like where to go and how to do the thing. And he was like, if you've never elk hunted before, you don't want your first tag to be like a great unit.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to know what to do. You're just going to like stumble all over yourselves and then be disappointed that you wasted an awesome hunt. So he's like, why don't you, here's a great bull unit. Go in there, just buy a cow tag over the counter and just go fuck around. Like, you know, go have some experiences. If you get a crack at a cow, cool. Like I've shot 7 whitetails this year. Like I'm all about I got 3 freezers, fill those bitches up. Like that's all we eat. So it's like, if I go out and shoot a cow, I'm gonna be ecstatic. I'm screw packing that thing out. I'm probably just gonna throw over my shoulder. I'll be so pumped up. I'll just run down the damn mountain with her. I don't know what's gonna happen.
But people do that all the time. They're like, I want to go elk hunting someday, you know, when I draw a good tag, and they draw it, but they just don't have the skills to execute. And it's like, you just wasted that tag. You know, I very similar, you know, to that. I always tell people like, you know, Utah's great spike cow hunts, and like, they're in phenomenal units. So it's like we say at bats. So like, you just have to get the at bats. Like you have to, you know, see the situation over and over. And, you know, you go to like one of these Utah units and you're hunting in the rut. This is great units. Like there's great elk numbers. It's not like, you know, you could go on some crappy hunts and you wouldn't see in a single elk the whole time. You're like, well, learned a lot.
Yeah. And then you'd be like, was it me? Was it the elk? Like what was it?
Like, yeah, like if you went where I was in Arizona, you probably wouldn't have seen an elk the entire time, and you'd be like, well, that was dumb, you know. Yeah, so like, if you go to you go to those places in Utah, and it's like, and I say like, man, honestly, when it comes to like hunting big bulls, essentially you're hunting the cows anyway. And so honestly, if you can sneak up on and shoot a cow, like you're good. Like you just couldn't shoot the bull that time, but like essentially it's very similar, you know. So if you can put a stock on a big herd,
you wouldn't be super pissed if you screwed it up, right? If it was a big bull and you got close and you screwed it up, you'd be like, damn, it would just eat you alive. But if it's a cow, you'd be like, well, that's fun.
Like, let's do it again.
Yeah. There's 75 more here, so hopefully we get another crack.
Yeah, and in some of those units, dude, I mean, you'd be on elk 2 or 3 times a day. Like you could just like more at bats, just constant at bats. Like that's all.
I mean, I feel like I'm a kid learning how to fish, and my dad's like, we're gonna go out and catch some bluegills, right? Like you ain't going for bass or walleyes or pike or anything. You just go out bluegill fishing. Like that's what I need. That's where I need to start my elk hunting.
Yeah, and dude, that's a great analogy because like you want to learn how to cast. Like you go to one of these like bass ponds where like, you know, every other cast you're hooking a bass. Like you're gonna learn how to cast. You're gonna learn how to reel fish in. Like you're just gonna get like the rhythm down. Like if you're like, oh yeah, let's go trophy pike fishing. You're like, cool, got one. No, never get a bite. Never saw a fish. You're like,
I had a bite. It turned out as a log, or a weed, but maybe it's a fish, and I just set the hook on the log. I don't know.
Yeah.
What? I'm curious for you because you go on so many hunts and like adventure hunts. Where's your wife stand with this? Is she like into it? Does she go hunting too? Does she just put up with you? Where's her mindset on all this stuff?
Probably somewhere in the middle. You know, like she does awesome, and she knows like this is kind of just what I do. She kind of married into it a little bit, but she's not a hunter. She likes to go. We do a lot of spring bear hunting, and she likes to go do that. You know, that's something she likes to glass. You know, so she'll go once in a while. It's tough, like as you know, with kids, it's like doesn't work out as much. Yep. Yeah. And so like she's not a big hunter, and it's kind of like my thing, that she's like, yeah, you go do your thing. So yeah, somewhere in the middle, but I think she would go more if we didn't have, you know, little rugrats running around and pulling on her all the time.
I play this game of like trying to get my kids into it without pushing them into it. Right. Like I really want them to like it, because if they're into it, then we can all go.
Yeah.
and that's like the dream for me, is just so that a little bit selfishly that I have the excuse to go out, and it's a blast bringing them out. My 7 and 5-year-old will come out whitetail hunting with me, and sometimes we'll sit in a blind, but my 7-year-old, I got her a saddle this year, so she would even like climb a tree with me. And she's like, she does you know, the American Ninja Warrior show where they're doing outdoor stuff. she does that stuff like in competition. So she's just this little bowling ball of muscle. So she doesn't give a shit about the deer hunting. She just thinks it's cool climbing a tree. Like, that's sweet. So we can sit there for, 45 minutes and at least like be outside for a little bit. But I'm hoping that it turns into enough of excitement about the activity that it's a family thing. And my wife did an archery league with me a few years ago, and she's gotten into it. Now she has a food blog called Venison 365ish. And so she's always like posting for eating, and she gets into the food side of it. She shot her first deer with the bow this year. We didn't find it, which was a super bummer. I think she lunged it, and it started raining out like an hour after we left it. We thought we were in the clear. Like, the rain wasn't the rain stopped. Like, we went out hunting right when the rain stopped. So we thought we were good and shot it right at last light. It looked like a really good hit. Blood for 50, 60 yards. And then it like went through a thicket, and then we just lost it. But it was just washed out. And that's like, I don't know. Maybe she didn't hit it where I thought she did, but it's like broadside, mid height on the body, right behind the shoulder. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, if you would have just had a blob of a deer out there and said, where would you want to hit this deer? I would have pointed right where your arrow went. Like, I don't know what else could have possibly happened. Who knows? All kinds of weird stuff happens when you're archery hunting, but it's been cool to watch her just get into it and have the up that. By the way, that was the third time she had shot at that deer on that hunt. The first time it was 15 yards away broadside. It was just like a 1.5-year old buck. The first time it was 15 yards away broadside, and she shot, and her arrow just like went haywire. And what we realized is her bow was like still on the hook on the tree. And we're saddle hunting, and she's a little uncomfortable with it. So she was like leaned way towards the tree. And so the bow was like touching the tree, touching that. So when she released, like, that got into the decompression of the bow. So we think that was what happened there. And then the deer kind of like ran, made a loop, and was still like coming through and was going like 25 yards and angling to 30. And she was afraid to give him like the bat and try to stop him. And so the first time the deer just stopped and she shot at it. The second time she shot at it while it was walking, and she like rushed it, and she just shot right underneath it. And I had said it's at like 22 yards, and then it's walking away. And then she just shot. And I was like, why didn't you stop it? And she's like, I'm just afraid it's going to spook. And I'm like, well, when you shot, it was like 30 yards away. I'm guessing you used your 20-yard pin. And she's like, I don't even know. Right. She's like, she's like, I just don't even know. And sure as shit, like 20 minutes later, last light, that same deer made a loop and came right back into us. And she ended up shooting it at 30 yards. And like I said, hit it perfect. And it was what we talked about earlier, catching bluegills. It was just getting a ton of reps and like hilarious experiences over and over again, but reps and reps and reps. Super bummer we didn't find it. But part of hunting is like the disappointment of missing or the excruciating new, like, I don't even have a good word for when you wound one and you don't find it and you just feel awful about it. But you kind of need to go through that to like, that's just part of it, and the ups and downs. And so she got all that just in one hunt, it was like, years worth, the
whole journey,
20 minutes there.
Yeah, it's funny you were talking about the kids. I've always been like super paranoid about my kids not being into it. Like, I had a lot of hunting mentors, and their kids wouldn't hunt, and I thought that was the craziest thing. And I've always been like kind of cautious, like, you don't want to push your kid, whatever. And for whatever reason, my kid is like obsessed, dude. The kid is bloodthirsty, and like, he's obsessed with hunting. So like, it's been fun. Like, he gets to go out. Like, it's kind of tough because I do so many like crazy big hunts that he doesn't get to go on everything, obviously. But he gets to go doe hunting. We shot some antelope this year, and like, he's just like, he's all about it, loves it.
Hell yeah. I don't know what the secret recipe is for like not for keeping your kids engaged in it, not alienating them. Because I feel like if you overdo it, it's like feeding the same food to somebody too often. Even if they loved it at one point in time, they're just gonna like get very sick of it. And so I feel like if you immerse them too much in it, they're gonna burn out on it and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm forced to do this, right? And if you don't introduce it and make it fun, they're not going to be interested in it. right? And so it's
Dude, it's
this
funny
weird,
because like I had this conversation with someone. I was like, I have a lot of friends who take their kids all the time, and I'm like, man, I think the thing that made me obsessed was not getting to go. Like my
yeah,
dad, with Big Hunter, I started when I was like 4, and we go deer hunting, but I can count far more times I didn't get to go. Dad was like, no, I'm going alone tonight. I was like, yeah, so mad, and like you sit there and wait for him to get home, or like you go elk hunting, and you're like just for days sitting by the door waiting for him to get home, and
yeah,
so like then when you did get to go, you're like, I get to go. It was like such a big deal. And so I think about that too. I think it's far more the times I didn't get to go that pushed me than the times I did. And
yeah.
so the other secret I have is my wife hates this, but like unlimited bubbly waters, unlimited like whatever. So like at this point, so my kid's for reference, my kid's 4. And he went on an elk pack out with me when he was 2. He's killed a number of deer. And like, so this year, we're like, oh, we're going to antelope camp. And so we had like, he's going to do the full thing. So usually it's a day hunt, but like, we were going for a weekend. And when we go hunting, like, dude, he gets unlimited bubbly waters, like however many he wants, like, and like, I always say, with my kid, it's about everything's super unknown. And so he fears the unknown until it becomes known. And so if I can just associate all the things we're doing with he gets unlimited bubbly waters, like that's like, it's the greatest trip in the world to him, nothing to do with whether we killed something or not, whether he hiked hard, like he has no satisfaction of he worked like to some degree, no satisfaction of like, oh, we worked really hard. It was like, that was the coolest trip.
Pride's
because I got 20 bubbly waters, like, like he comes home, he's just a terrorist. My wife hates it. But at the same time, like all he knows is last time we went hunting, it was super fun, and it was like, that's his association.
Yep. I'm a sucker for like hard candy. Anytime we go out hunting, it's always like hard candy. I have yet to find one that has a quiet enough wrapper to appease me, because it's like when you got kids out there and you're trying to be quiet, it's like God, I just hope it sounds enough like a squirrel that the deer would be fooled. But there's always juice and candy, and so but now it's almost gotten to the point. And I guess when we go deer hunting too, sometimes I'll let them bring their screens and like play some games and stuff if we're sitting in a blind or something. So I try to like keep some things that they're familiar with so that they just get like exposure, and then I slowly start weaning it down. But I do think I've overdone it a little bit, because when like if we're going out fishing, they're like, I don't know if I really want to go. Wait, are there going to be snacks? And I'm just like, yes, of course. But we're going fishing because we're trying to catch some fish, because we want to do a fish fry. And so the number one objective is catch some fish, and I expect that you're going to reel some fish in. And once you reel a fish in, then you can have a snack. So, little carrot to dangle. But it is funny trying to play that game, trying to keep them engaged.
Yeah, it's definitely a game. Like you're trying to, keep them appeased. Like it's so funny. Like this year I saw some antelope. I was like, let's go get him. I bet we made it 40 yards. And my son's like, okay, let's go back. I was like, really? they're right there, dude. I was like, are you sure?
Yeah, like
let's
those
go back.
Things, we're going for those. Like we're it's right there is where we came from. It's really not that far back there.
Actually, it's really funny. Was this year or last year? I feel like maybe it was last year. So he was 3, and I was just gonna go shoot some whitetail does, like whatever, taking the kid. And there's like this little chunk of state ground, and my buddy's like, yeah, I saw some does in there. So we go, and I brought his little excavator and his little skid steer, and he's like playing with him in the truck, and we go, and man, we made it like 150 yards, and like he's not being quiet at all. But we come across this like sand area, and it's pretty sweet sand area. It's like, dude, this is like a play area. He's like, yeah, let's go get the excavator. I'm like, seriously? And he's like, Dad. He's like, he's obsessed. He's like, we gotta go get my excavator. And so like I had to walk back to the truck. We go get the excavator. We come back. I was like, dude, we're like, doe hunting out, but like whatever. I'm not gonna like
playing in this huge ass sandbox now.
Yeah.
Like, I'll sit here with my binoculars just in case. Yeah, just in case something rolls up.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What how did you get Rich Ideas Lab going? Like what was the impetus for that? When did that thing start up? Like I said earlier, Cole just introduced me to it, but I ranted on my radio show the last couple of weeks about how much I dislike social media. I did have to acknowledge that, like, well, shit, I'm live on social media right now. So to not be super hypocritical, I also had to have a list of things that I like. And it turned out they were like kind of 50-50, about as many things that I like as I dislike, which probably explains why I deleted Twitter. I got into like a political thing with the communist on there, and I was just like, this is just such a waste of fucking time. But I love Rich Ideas Lab for like, you're just surrounding yourself with the right group of people, and it's the exclusivity of it. So you just don't have a lot of like jackwagons in there, and you have conversations about shit that matters. How did you come up with it? When did you start it? Where's it headed? Give us the lowdown on it. And I guess if there's, outdoorsy people listening that aren't on there already, tell them how they can get on there.
Yeah. So, I mean, like me, like I told you guys, I grew up little farm community, farm town, whatever you want to call it. And like, so I didn't have any mentors. I sure as hell didn't know anyone that was like doing ecom, that's for sure. And so like, I was a part of a number of groups throughout the years, masterminds, coaching groups, like all these things. And like, I just never really had anything in common. Like, there's a lot of like laptop entrepreneurs that were, trying to live on the beach in, Dubai or something. And I'm like, yeah, I like to live in a tent in the mountains and chase elk, and so like, I was very different. But a lot of those mentorship groups, like I got a lot of value out of them, and a lot of the coaching groups, a lot of the, like just those type of things that I did to learn to get to where I am. And, for me, when it came down to it, you had kind of talked about like, we call it in the community, we call it, I do this thing called the map check challenge, which is like, it helps people find, what you want to do, find your purpose, and kind of the I forget the term, the Venn diagram you were referring to. There's another one called the Ikigai, which is like this Japanese term of like finding your purpose. And your purpose is kind of this balance of like what you're good at, what you can provide to the world, and what will pay you, and those type of things. And we do like this like map check challenge, like how to basically make sure you're on the right route. And within that is like that felt like my kind of like Ikigai, like how can I, give back? I love helping entrepreneurs. I love talking to entrepreneurs, just like you. And it's like, how can I provide value, and those type of things. And so like, that was kind of like my impetus. I actually didn't originally plan to make it just for outdoors people. I think just by nature of like my podcast and the people who are following me, it became this thing where like all these entrepreneur hunter dudes that were like, dude, I run a business just so I can go hunting, started coming into the community. And it was like, it just naturally flowed into the conversations. And I was like, I'm not going to like curb it. I enjoy this conversation. I like talking to entrepreneurs who also hunt. We have some more than one thing in common, which, I kind of like. So that wasn't actually intentional. It just happened to be that way.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And it turns out, there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are entrepreneurs so they can go hunting. So it was kind of like its own beast that became. And so like, I didn't plan that. So I'm just going to kind of we'll see where it goes, and just keep helping entrepreneurs, and trying to, I'm not saying like we do a lot of coaching, but it's like, yeah, I love those type of things. And originally we had this like concept, I did like a cohort class where we taught a lot of like the e-com entrepreneurship type stuff. And from that, we used to have these things called jam sessions. So after, class, we do like an hour class on Tuesday and Thursday. And then we would just like jam on ideas, or like I would riff on how to take this idea or what I would do with it. And I think that's so important. Like when I was young, I wish I had someone that was like, if I wanted to start this business, here's how I would do it. And like, blah, 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 blah. And just like hearing those high level conversations is like hearing how people think. So if you and I were to like sit here and riff about how we would start a new company or what we would do, there's so much nuance in that conversation that like you can't even get. Like I could sit here and say like, hey, here's how you should start a business. But it actually looks different than if you and I were just like riffing on business ideas or how we think about it, what businesses we would start, which ones we wouldn't. And so that jam session kind of became like what we took on to the Ideas Lab. And so now, a couple times a month, we do either a jam session where it's like, a few guys in the community are riffing on ideas, or we'll bring in someone like yourself who's going to like coach on a specific topic or skill set within entrepreneurship. And so, it's good for a couple things. It's good for people who like just kind of want to get their feet wet, like I want to be better at entrepreneurship. I want to surround myself with people who think bigger, think differently. And it's the second part of that would be like it's good for kind of just networking, meeting people who are doing the thing you're doing, who love the things you're doing. It's great for asking questions. Like we have this like like you said, the social media side is kind of the downside, but like I love the fact that I'm like, hey, does anybody do this? And like our group is so diverse because it's like a lot of it is just focused around the hunting. That like you get people who are like, yeah, dude, I run an Amazon store. Like, here's my thought on it, blah, 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 blah. And so like a lot of times, a lot of these communities that I've been a part of, it's all e-com guys, right? So it's like just e-commerce and nobody has outside experience. And so like the lab kind of just became, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, I got dudes that run a bookkeeping service. I got dudes that run Amazon fulfillment. I got dudes that are, raising venture capital. Like, it's cool melting pot.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting that the thing that ties everybody together is, there's business owner, business problem things, but like you said, it's from such a breadth of industries. It just so happens that everybody's outdoorsy too. And it is a funny brotherhood / sisterhood of to what we talked about earlier. We're all just part of this hobby that's a real pain in the ass, and
right.
and it's like we chose it, right? Like we like it, and so you just run into like just kind of tough, gritty folks. Like that's how they run their business, that's how they run their life, that's how they pick their hobbies, right? And so you immediately just have a higher level of trust in somebody. If you throw a question out there, the people that are going to respond are just at another level of what you would get if you threw that question in any random ass Facebook group or whatever the case is. You just have a higher level of trust that I believe what you're saying versus just some other keyboard warrior sitting there spouting off their opinions because you've done it before. And I know the type of person you are. Just the fact that you're in here and what you choose to do for fun tells me that you probably don't shy away from problem solving. So I trust where you're coming from.
And it's interesting. Like I didn't plan this at all, but it's like, I've seen this where I've been a part of groups and you ask a question and some dude has an answer, but like, and then you look and you're like, oh yeah, well, he just seems like the kind of guy that plays more video games and like nothing wrong with it. It was just like him and I don't have a lot in common, like he's just like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like, yeah, there's a different camaraderie when you're like, oh, these are people like me. And not that that's like, that can become an echo chamber, but I love that it's not an echo chamber because it's not like everyone's in the same industry or the same experiences. Like there's such vast different backgrounds. So that's kind of a cool thing.
How often do you do the jam sessions? Is it like every couple of weeks or what's?
Yeah, we do 2 a month. So yeah, during hunting season, we might've missed a couple, I guess, but normally, yeah. Priorities. Yeah. So the idea is, twice a month, and then they're on Wednesdays, and once a month we do one that's kind of like idea jams, or like today we did one, which was fairly interesting. There was like a new platform, e-com platform that we started talking about that just came out that has like AI product generation, and fulfillment and all these things. And so we were like just riffing on this, Michael and I were, which turned into like this interesting conversation around, the beef box type businesses. So, like the subscription boxes for, beef. And so like, yeah, it could be anything from that to like, I'd like to do a lot more, and we do some of these, but like, coaching aspects on different pieces of business. So I know there's a lot of newer entrepreneurs, and I think it's like, let's just say you came on and just talked about bookkeeping or like, applying that to your business. We've had like FP&A people like talking about, that the finance side of things. So like those type of conversations.
Heck yeah. Where's it headed? Do you have any like grand ideas for it to take it here, take it there, promote it more? I just happened to hear about it from Cole. I don't even know what like prompted him to be like, hey dude, you check this out. I did have grandiose plans. Like that was going to be the thing I kind of focused on. And now I'm like building this entire other business. So like, to me, it's kind of like, I'll let it grow organically and like see where it goes, which I think is kind of the best way to do it. Is, like
now I kind of see the value in like not trying to make it mainstream or trying to make it as big as we can. And it's like, I want to get to a certain threshold and then like, you know, like have a good core group of community. And so I don't have this, like, we need 5,000 members. Like, I don't know if that's the right answer for us.
Yep. Yeah. I was a part of a mastermind group like that where the core group was great. And then, and the core group also said like, we should blow this thing up. This is so valuable. Right. And then in the process of like expanding it and blowing it up, it lost the value that it had as its core group. And now I'm just like, and it's an in-person thing. And so now it's just like, it's quarterly, 4 more travel things a year with 3 little kids. Like I already have conventions I got to go to. And frankly, like my travel hierarchy is hunting trips, fishing trips, conventions, mastermind groups. Not that I don't like mastermind groups, but I would rather just like go on a hunting trip with some other business owners. And that's pretty much just like the mastermindedness that I need. Like,
dude, and it's funny because like we talk about vision. That's kind of my goal. Is like I see it as like, okay, how do I surround myself with cool people and like just kind of do some hunting trips or those type of things with those type of people. And so again, I've been a part of those groups too, where it's like the bigger they got, the worse they got. And so I really worry. I don't know if I worry about it, but I'm cognizant of it to say like, yeah, I want it to be a cool group and not a big group.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. It's hard to predict like the erosion of it, but I think when it's a tight group, I think you're right. If you force the growth, it erodes the value. I think if it grows organically, it has a way better chance of keeping the value. It can still grow, but it's got to grow for the right reasons, not because it was like pushed to be something that it wasn't meant to be.
Right. And like it's funny because you know, man, communities are interesting. Like there's this entire interesting, we didn't do an entire podcast on that, but I found that like, you know, what lead gen we use dictates who comes in. And I really want to guard who comes in, you know, like whether it's like an application. So, you know, like you could create this, like say one ad and like this, maybe like we do create these playbooks. And so if you have like a playbook that's going to bring in, you know, one type of person versus another, it's like, it actually dictates what that community looks like. So I could create a playbook, run ads for it. And all of a sudden, like we're getting more and more people, but I'm like, are they the right people? Like, is this like where we want the core group to be? Because if all of a sudden it's like our core group is 100 people and we bring in 200 people that are only focused on this one aspect of business, you're like, oh man, that just like flooded it. Right. And like, just that could change the entire aspect of it. So like I said, like I found that like building communities way harder than I would ever would have thought. But it also like, it's finicky. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Well, we're an hour and a half in, and I know we could keep going, but you know, at some point we'll wrap this baby up. I got. I think I'll call this a closing question, unless I think of anything else. And I'll say, skip over the project you're working on right now, but if you could just go do anything, money wasn't an object. I'll leave hunting and stuff like that in there if you can figure out a way to carve it in. But if you could go do anything, obviously it's like got to be a career aspiration thing. What would you go do right now? Money, no object. Opportunity, no object. What's the most interesting thing to you?
Dude, and this actually kind of wraps up everything I've done. I don't know if I'm a tight little bow, but like I've thought about this quite a bit. So, you know, I built companies and it was always just like for money, like for, you know, you're trying to get money in the early days and then you're trying to get time and, you know, you spend a lot of time trying to get your time. And then, so let me back up. When I talk about entrepreneurship, a lot of times I'll talk about, you know, there's 3 different ladders to entrepreneurship. In your early years, your 20s, you know, you're just trying to get money. You're just whatever I got to do to make money. That's like number 1 priority, right? And so you end up climbing this ladder to find money, and then you get to the top of that ladder and you have money, but then you're like, shit. Well, now I really want time. And so you have to climb back down the money ladder a lot of times, and you have to climb up a different ladder that goes money and then time. And so like you get to this point where you're like, now I have money and I have time. Like I can do whatever I want. And almost every entrepreneur who gets to that point goes, but I have no purpose. Like what am I doing? Like, what is this all for? And so then a lot of entrepreneurs have to go back down and they have to like climb up this new ladder that is money, time, and purpose. And I kind of went through that where I had the money, had the time, and I was like, okay, what's my purpose? And I was like, maybe like helping other people, coaching other people, and doing this like community type thing was like, maybe that would give me purpose. And I didn't see it in the beginning. I still like, I struggle with it. I don't know if that is my purpose, but I've like gone full circle now of like, I just understand that like what I want to do, I enjoy helping people, but I don't know if it's the end all be all purpose for me. I really do enjoy it. But for me, like, I think all three of those things are just working on cool projects with cool people. Like I want to build cool shit with cool people. And that's just building companies. I love starting a new project and like doing it, 5 years or whatever, and then selling it. Like, that's just who I am. I love the grind part of it. I love, inventing something new, and I love doing it with cool people. And so for me, like where I'm at, like in the current project is what I want to do. Like if money and time didn't, or if money didn't matter, like I would still do the exact same thing I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like I'm still going to like build companies, build cool ass products, and try to work with the coolest people I can, and like, that's kind of all I want to do. Like outside of like, yeah, I still want to go do hunts and stuff. Like if I wanted to tomorrow, I could pretty much just hunt for a living. I don't want to do that. I actually don't like, and that's crazy because people are like, are you kidding me? Like if you had all the time in the world, I would just hunt. Like, actually, I wouldn't. I've been close enough to it that I know I wouldn't. Honestly, like 60, 80 days is a lot. And like people think they want to hunt all the time.
Yeah.
Dude, I have buddies that hunt 120 days a year. I have no desire. Like, it's just not what I want to do. Like I get more fulfillment out of building things and working. Like maybe I'm a little bit of a workaholic, but like, that's what I want to do. I want to go build cool shit. And so like, I've been lucky and fortunate enough to have had enough experiences to know like, okay, I don't really want to start a YouTube channel and just hunt all the time. That actually sounds terrible. So I love the capability of being able to go hunting when I want. I like being able to go 4 or 5 trips a year and do a bunch of cool shit. I know myself well enough that I don't need $100 million. Like, it's not going to make me happier. Like I don't need it. Dude, I drive a Dodge with 300,000 miles on it. Like, I don't really need a brand new truck all the time. I don't need the fancy things. Right. And so like, that's where I'm at in life, is just like, I want to do cool shit with cool people. Yeah. And I think that's about it.
Well, and I think to the point about helping people, that's a finicky thing, because it's like, if you're creating something that people want, well, then you're helping the shit out of people. Right. And so you're doing I'm kind of like this in my bookkeeping business. I had this conversation with a guest a couple weeks ago, and I was like, man, I'm just not money motivated in this business. Like, I don't have a revenue goal. That maybe you call me lazy, but I'm not doing this to make the most amount of money in the world. I'm doing it because I really like helping our clients, and the clients will dictate how fast this thing grows. I'll build it as fast as they want me to, and I'll be making these shows, and I'll be doing other things to build the community around it. But I'm not building this thing. My purpose of building this thing isn't to pile up a bunch of money in Dan's bank account. My wife makes more money than I do anyway, so what's the point? Every time I go hunting, I'm just using her money to go hunting. But it's way more satisfying to me. The helping people thing is like getting small business owners dialed in on their finances. And if I do a great job of fulfilling that purpose, there's gonna be plenty of money. Like, I know what to charge for it. I know what the business model is. I'm not a stranger to that. But I've never been fulfilled by being like, need to make this thing $1 million, need to get it to 5, need to get it to $10 million. Because all that happens when I get there is I'm just like, now what? Like, I don't get any joy or happiness out of that. As long as I have enough to go hunting and fishing when I want, that's where my joy and happiness. I don't think that's where the joy and happiness comes from. That's where the connections with the right type of people come from. But the joy and happiness comes from helping change somebody else's life, because they were a disaster until they understood their books and they were able to make the better decisions and hire their first employee or whatever the case is. And so I think when you get to like helping people, if you design your business in the right way, by default, you create something that a lot of people are going to want. And the more people that want it, the more people you get to help. Right. And it's kind of like a roundabout way to get to the same thing. But if you're doing the thing that makes you money and it gives you the time to go pursue your passions too, you also just end up helping the most amount of people that you possibly can versus setting out directly to try to help people without creating something that they want. So
yeah, no, I agree, and like 100% agree with that. And you know, I don't know if it's financial goals. Like there's like goals I have to hit financially, but they're not for financial reasons. They're just benchmarks.
Yeah.
I love the quote that says, like, if you can't be happy with a cup of coffee, you won't be happy with a yacht. And I think there's so much truth to that. Is like entrepreneurs tend to want to like just hit numbers, hit goals, and that's great. But you know, you do it long enough and you realize like, I won't be happy there. Like that's just the facts. It's, you know, it's a product of our own demise, but like in some ways, like I'll always hit another number and I won't be happy. So it's like, you know, once you get there, the goalpost moves. And I think once you recognize that, it does a lot for yourself. And so you're like, okay, like I can still set those goals, but like, how do I be happy with where I am? Because if I only put happiness on the next goalpost, like you'll never be at peace.
Yeah, it's always you running away from you.
Yeah. And so like, I don't know, that's kind of where I am, but I do have some I mean, I don't want to say that. And like, I do have super lofty goals for this next business, but they're more markers of like me as an entrepreneur. Like here's some goals I want to hit as an entrepreneur. It has nothing to do with the money.
Yeah. No matter what game you're playing,
right?
Everybody likes looking at the scoreboard. Right. It's like, that's how we can tell if what we're doing is working. So we got to measure ourselves to know if we're making an impact. I think it kind of comes full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, which is you're running this business, you're trying to make an impact. I forgot exactly. I'm trying to like remember what the hell we said at the beginning so I can use those exact words and it's fleeting me. But just around the idea of I lost it. I can't believe I lost it. I just had it. I had the words. Cody.
Damn it! I was gonna look so smart for a second.
It was so good. I was gonna be like a good comedian where you bring it full circle. It'll come back to me probably right after we jump off because that's how these things work. But just God, I just had it again. It was right on the tip of my brain. I'll try to get there by talking it out loud like a really shitty show host. How does that sound? But just this idea of like, what is the real purpose behind what we're doing? And I got it now because we were bringing it between like hunting and business ownership. And we all like chase these goals. And in this business, I've done a way better job of it than I did in my last business. But like just enjoying the damn journey is what it comes down to. Like in hunting, you're going to have a bunch of failures. My wife shot at the same deer 3 damn times in a night, finally hit it, and then we didn't find it. I think previous Plata, that's what I like to call myself in the past, previous Plata. Right now, this is present Plata. Previous Plata would have been like really hung up about it, would have eaten me up. And same with like missing business targets or whatever. Failures used to like drive me nuts. And now I have this weird joy in a failure where I'm like able to, it's almost like an inception moment. I'm able to step back a little bit and just be so thankful to even be on the ride. Like so few people get the opportunity to be a part of the hunting journeys that we do or the business journeys that we do. It's like win or lose, I'm here playing a game, and that's just pretty damn cool. And so, yeah, I'm going to screw some stuff up. I think maybe I'm just like immune to the feelings of screwing stuff up because I just screw stuff up a lot. So I'm just okay with it now. But I'm just very determined to like not be so destined for where I'm trying to get to that I overlook everything in between. Right. And I just like lose my mind obsessing about the destination and overlook the entire journey. So I'm trying to like live a little bit better in the moment, enjoy the journey, enjoy the successes, but super enjoy the failures. And yeah, you're going to feel some shitty emotions, but like enjoy the shitty emotions. That's pretty damn cool that we get the shitty emotions of like the big failures and the big misses and the wounding an animal and all that stuff. It's just part of it. Yeah. Enjoy the ride, man.
Yeah. And it's easier said than done. I mean, you know, my 25, 20, even 30-year-old self would be like, what the hell are these guys talking about? Like maybe like he comes of age.
Who are these old hippies?
Who are these hippies? Yeah. But 100%. And, you know, it's like the chase for, at the 200-inch buck or whatever. Like if you obsess about killing a 200-inch buck, you'll miss out on all the shit in between. And I think about that a lot with hunting, is like, man, I can be the worst of them. Like I can be so mission driven. Like I forget everything. And so I am as guilty. Like, don't think I am good at being in the moment. My wife would be laughing if she heard us talking about this, because I'm terrible at it. But at the end of the day, like I do think, like, you have to find the wins. And it was like, circling this back to the beginning conversation of like, when you're so used to like a Tuesday being such a shitty day that you're like, yeah, this is just normal. This is what we do. It's the same with the win side too. It's like, you have to appreciate, like the little wins. And I suck at it. Don't worry. I suck at it. I'm better at it in the hunting side than the business side. But I think that, the longer you go, full circle, like you're just used to like everything's going to go wrong in business, and that's just what happens. And like,
we don't need to freak out about it. This was supposed to happen. This is just how this
is what it looks like. So yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. Well, Cody, thanks for jumping on and hanging out and making a marathon episode with me. I know if we wanted to, we would just keep going, but sure. I just ran out of O'Duels. I'm on O'Duels, so I don't know. What
I'm out of banquets. So
there you go. You're a little stronger than mine. Oh no, I'm not out. I have one sip left.
Kill it.
No, I'm out. Just
wild man. Smashing O'Duels.
Yeah, somebody the other day was like, I dare you to shotgun that beer. And I was just like, I just don't like the size of burp that would come out from throwing back an NA beer would be outrageous. I don't think the world is ready for that. Well, I appreciate you jumping on, man. Looking forward to hanging out on Rich Ideas Lab and jamming sometime and catching all the content you're putting out. I got to check out your podcast. I think Cole at one point had mentioned it and I totally forgot about it. So I've never listened. I got to catch up. I got to go on a binge fest. Good thing I do. It's ice fishing season, and I got probably like 5-6 hour drive up to the lake and back 5 or 6 times yet this winter. So I'll be got some time to binge.
Well, dude, I talk a lot about hunting and entrepreneurship, and like it started as a hunting podcast, and like naturally, like I'm super into entrepreneurship, obviously. And so like I really kind of lean heavily into like the entrepreneurship, the hunting side. Like a lot of the conversation we had today was like pretty much what I talk about all the time. So
that's funny because this is a business podcast, and most of the time I talk about hunting stuff. So I think same, different but still the same.
Different but same. Nice.
Well, I appreciate you hanging out. Home service homies, thank you guys for tuning in and hanging in there with us in the check-ins. Appreciate the hell out of you guys. You know what to do. Work smarter and harder. Go earn yourself some pride. Good night.
Thanks, man.